Going live on YouTube as well. So welcome to our 21st episode of the Gutenberg Times live Q&A. My name is Birgit Pauli-Haag and I'm your host and the curator of Gutenberg Times. Thank you all for joining us. It's so great to have you. In today's show, we will discuss and show you some experimental full-site editing experience on Gutenberg and how theme templates and template parts could be used. There's a big caveat: nothing is set in stone or final. The experimental flag is on these things for a reason. I'm extremely honored to have Enrique Piqueras from the Gutenberg development team as our guest today. Hi, Enrique.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, you're welcome, and I love what you did on the work. So it's really cool. So where are you right now?
I'm currently visiting family in Peru, but I'm usually based out of Seattle.
All right. So I'm assuming also the weather is better in Peru.
Yeah, gotta run away from the winter during this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Remotely, you can switch between hemispheres when it's convenient.
Well, I'm glad we're still on the same time zone, so I or you don't have to get up in the middle of the night. So where is everyone else? Where are you listening for? So use the chat window to the right or on the bottom. There's a little chat button to and let us know where you're from. So we have quite a few. I see some familiar faces, well, names actually, but we also have a few new people here on our Zoom. So I'll explain a little bit for the Q&A session. It's on the bottom of the page. There is a Q&A button where we have the questions, and then that's where I read from. And for the YouTube Q&A, who watching us on YouTube, please use the chat window to the right. And I switched between the two systems, so I might not be very good in keeping the order straight. So please forgive me. And there's also, please keep it kind, even if you disagree, be kind. This is a family-friendly endeavor. So, Enrique, I think we are good to head into it. Enrique, who do you work for and what do you do? Just kind of a little introduction.
So I work for Automatic and I spend most of my time working on Gutenberg.
All right, cool. So what's the show about? Yaron Miro already had a question. Thanks for setting this up. This will be available for download later and watch it again. Yes, we are live streaming on YouTube, and YouTube then will, after the show is over, well, I don't know, sometimes it takes half an hour, sometimes it takes an hour. The recording will be available on YouTube channel on the youtube.com/Gutenberg Times channel. We will also create a transcript of that and have the post on the Gutenberg Times later next week with the resources and the links that we share here on the chat window, and also with additional information that we might touch on, or Enrique might touch on here. So Enrique will walk us through the highlights of the experimental full-site editing experience, and then we will discuss how block-based themes could work and how they are backwards compatible and so much more. And we will answer a question in between. As I said, it's all cutting-edge stuff and very early in the stage. When it's eventually released, it might look differently, and it's hard. But it's hard to form an opinion about all things and give input when no one has an understanding how the pieces might fit together. So without further ado, Enrique, it's all yours.
Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen. I want to start by giving a sort of visual tour of how this works and what we've done with themes.
Excellent.
Oops, let me mute that. And Then like we'll leave the floor open for questions because I imagine there will be a lot.
So I'll just kind of greet a few people. So hi, Roy from Seattle. Hi, Dennis from Rhode Island. Hi, Aline. Yeah, big from Philly. Bego from Bonn. I went to school in Bonn for 10 years. So this session will be, it depends on how many questions we'll have, but it will be about an hour. So,
okay. So can you see my screen now?
I can see your screen, yes.
Okay.
Can everybody else see Enrique's screen?
Yeah, I can see the chat right now, but.
Okay, cool.
All of these things are currently behind a feature flag or a Gutenberg experiment, which is what we're calling them. So to work with this, you have to go to this page under Gutenberg experiments, turn this on, save your changes, which I've already done. Oops. Just taking its time.
You have the whole world coming through the pipe, so.
So my local environment, but there it is.
Right.
Okay, so the main thing this is going to do is change how template resolution works in the theme resolution code. So it's going to enhance themes with the ability to define block templates and block template parts. So these are sort of a parallel to what we've always done traditionally with PHP files. But instead of having PHP code, they have HTML, which is serialized block content from the block editor. So this is what your block editor saves when you edit a post and what gets rendered on the front end. I've gone ahead and installed a theme that takes advantage of this. WordPress has a theme experiment repo with currently 4 themes that are playing around with these features. Most of them are based on Mel's Johannes theme. So if you want to sort of experiment with this yourself, I would encourage you to start with this because it's a lot more bare bones and fully works with the plugin. Some of these are trying new things that are not that stable and you might run into a few errors and it'll just be a bit harder for you to understand how things are working. So for this, I've installed Parisien, and I'm going to show you my local directory, what it looks like. So this is a theme. I have an empty index. This is just for convention. You could remove it. In the future, we might remove it. The license, the README, your classic style CSS, with global styles, resets. And
Enrique,
yeah.
may I bother you to kind of make it a little bit bigger on the code?
Sure. It's not really, it's just a random CSS reset.
Right. But just kind of, I know they're, yeah, but it's really hard to read a bit.
Yeah. Is that better?
That's awesome. Yes.
Okay. So in your functions, you have the theme supports, some color changes for the block editor. Some of these, this one has some starter content. And so this hasn't changed much, except for the fact that the starter content is now like block content. And here's where things change. So now we have a block templates and a block template parts folder. And here we have these HTML templates that are the serialized block content I was talking about. So template parts and templates. Now, how these work, to understand, you have to look at the theme hierarchy. So when your WordPress instance serves a site on the front end, it's going to go through this hierarchy to resolve what template it should show. So if you're looking at a singular page, it's going to ask, is this a static page, single post page? Say it's a static page. Okay, so we need a page template. Is there a custom template assigned to this page, or should we just use the default one? Let's say there's no custom one, so we look at the default one. Is there a page dash the slug of this CPT type, or the slug of the page, sorry. If there is one, it's going to use it. If there isn't one, it's going to go to the next one, and so on until it finds a template. All the way to index.php, which is the one you must have. And these HTML templates now, when you have the feature flag enabled, will be given higher priority over this PHP template hierarchy. So now it will not only look for PHP files, but also for these HTML templates. And it will do so in a sort of enhanced way, which allows for users to manipulate them. That's a bit confusing, but I'm going to try to explain it a bit simpler. So say we're loading the same page we were talking about. None of these are defined, so we reach singular. Now the engine is going to ask, first, is there a singular customized template saved by the user? So this would be stored as an actual post in a hidden part of the database that doesn't actually render as a post on the site. So using the template CPT. If there is, it's going to use that. And that's the template it's going to resolve to, because it's a user customized template, and the user customized it for a reason. He's not going to want it to be overridden by the starter content from the theme. If there isn't one saved like that, it's going to go to the theme and look for a block template file. If there isn't one there, then it's going to do the PHP file. So it's like a 3-tiered hierarchy on top of this hierarchy for resolving these templates. So this allows for themes to progressively adopt block templates. You might even have cases where themes want to register specific areas for direct manipulation. So the whole point of doing this is that templates become user editable, because they're just serialized block content, so they can be loaded by a block editor under whatever context and edited and saved by users. But you might have very strict requirements over what parts of your site can be updated, and it might not be easy to handle with things like permissions. So you might still have some static HTML, PHP templates that specifically require HTML template parts in specific areas. So I'm just trying to show how it's very flexible. It doesn't lock you into just using HTML. It's a progressive enhancement over the current PHP template hierarchy. So let's look. I've activated this Parisian theme. Just has an index HTML. There's no PHP template, so it's just going to go all the way and resolve to this when loading the site. And this is what it looks like. You can see I have this Gutenberg here, a navigation menu, my address. I think this is a cover block, and a footer. So here you can see the header is a template part. The content is this thing called WP post content, and the site footer is another template part. So first, let's see what this header template part looks like. It's what we're seeing at the top. It's a navigation menu block with navigation links. There is a column on the right with some paragraphs for the address, and a group at the bottom. Oh, the whole thing is wrapped in a group. So another thing is, you're probably not going to be making these templates manually like you write PHP templates. You'll use an editor and then export the output. What you will be writing and coding will be the actual blocks that you use here. So that renders there. Then this WP post content is rendering the content. This is a dynamic block that just loads the post content of the first post in the loop. And then the site footer is another template part. So now, because these things are just blocks, we can load them into a block editor. So remember how I said that at every stage of the hierarchy, it's going to first look for a user customized version of the template, and then look for the file, and only use the file if it can't find the customized one. So this means we can now have these interfaces where we can have a way for completely editing the site. So this is the same thing I'm seeing here, but in the editing mode, in a block editor. And so what is this classic here? This is the nav menu. This is a site title block, the column with a paragraph. So the same thing that's on the file. Now, the reason you're seeing classic blocks there is because if you have markup that is not inside a block, like for example, this index template has this header HTML or this main HTML, that will still work in the editor. It'll just be a classic block that you can edit as raw HTML. So probably not the best user experience, but this is one of the first themes, and there probably aren't any blocks right now to support this sort of arbitrary class like site footer. We probably don't have something like that yet. That's why they did it. But now let me show you how you can edit things. So, I'm going to go ahead and edit the footer. So I can say new address, maybe change something here too. We can do some cool stuff like allowing you to zoom in the template parts that you have that are being used here. Now, this is not showing all template parts from the folder here because they're not being used in any templates. You have to insert them first for them to load. But you can go into the header and changes should sync, but something is going on, not syncing. You can update your design and the changes will show in the front end.
Yes, everybody saw that, right? It was so fast.
So now these show is customized because they've been customized. And it's telling you that it's not going to load the files anymore. It's going to load these customized versions. So that's sort of the idea, like what block templates can power. So naturally, I guess the next question people have is, how do we do more dynamic things with these templates? Because they're HTML, so they look kind of static. Like, how do I do translation? How do I have a post loop like I always have on PHP? Like I want an archive page with all of my recipe posts. So the answer to that is that it's now all in blocks. So you can have a dynamic block called the query block where you can expose a way for the user to customize a query visually in the editor. And that renders a list of posts using its inner blocks as configuration for the layout. And it's still PHP because that block has PHP code to render like that and have that behavior. It's just not here. It's on the PHP file that has the definition for the block. So we're sort of introducing just another layer between the dynamic PHP code and what's rendered on the site. And this new layer is directly editable by users, which is a much better user experience for people using WordPress. Now, I said I was going to say what this demo template thing is. And basically, that's just something we baked in right now into the plugin because you might enable this without having a theme activated that has block templates, and it'll show like an empty front end. It won't work. So demo templates are this hack to ship the plugin with some templates. You can't have a theme and a plugin combined in WordPress. So it's like a ad hoc way of shipping templates with a plugin. It's just temporary for people to test this. So if you enable it, it's going to load some templates that are here in the plugin, just a front page and a header that's being used to test development. And yeah, so what I was saying before also about this, the people making themes like this, that you're probably not going to be coding the templates manually. I meant that you could have a button like this where you say export as theme, and it exports your current set of templates and block template parts with your customizations. And then you open it and you have a sort of starter theme with the templates. And then you can go ahead and set edit your functions.php, index.php, and you can expand on this. Like I could see people making plugins for also doing these like starter content in a visual way, or that might even be done by core in the future. There's a lot more you can do now. Theme building can also be visual. Yeah, that's I think that's everything I wanted to show.
So, well, thank you, Enrique. This was quite, I think for someone who saw it the first time, a little bit overwhelming. So maybe you can unpack the parts again. You had this great overview graphic with the different levels.
Mm-hmm.
So the colors, I'm not sure if it was all clear what the colors were. Do you read it from left to right or from right to left?
So you read it from left to right.
Okay.
These gray blocks, they're not really templates. They're more like questions. That they call them page types here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking at a singular page, it's then going to ask, is it a single post page or a static page? And then based on that, it's going to go to the next level and to the next level. Then the orange ones are called variable templates. So these are actually files. So I'm sorry, I don't know why the phone is ringing in this room. And here's where it's going to look: is mime type subtype.php defined? If it's not, it's going to go to the next one and the next one, and so on. And the colors change just because they're a little bit different. So these are variable. So they're sort of dynamic based on some parameters of the post, like mime type, subtype. The secondary ones, I'm not sure what the difference between secondary and primary are. It seems kind of arbitrary. I guess it's just a hierarchical differentiation that they chose to make.
That's the actual static PHP that are kind of like convention to change some of things. And then the purple ones are some theme templates that are normal in Aya, and then they're the lines. Okay, any questions for that?
Another interesting thing that you can sort of visualize when you look at this is that if you're visually editing in the editor, say post type slug, so let's say it's a single recipe, single recipe.html template, you're editing that on the front end. The UI will probably have a way, this is more like a power user feature, but you could say, I want to fork this or like spin up a variation of this template for this other post type because they're very similar. Mm-hmm. You can use template parts between the two and stuff like that.
All right, excellent. Yeah, so that's the graphic. And then we now that we kind of went back to the beginning again, we now have a few questions. So, and I'm going to the chat first. Yaron has the question, is it possible to create a single template and just export that one without always exporting the entire theme file? Is that an idea that, so when you are able to, we didn't demo that yet. Yeah, you didn't demo that yet, that you could actually change template parts. And then you will be able to export those, right?
So he's asking whether you can export an individual template except for the whole folder. Yeah, I mean, that would be like switching to the code view and copy pasting the contents. You
Mhm.
could also just download the whole thing and just delete everything else, but that it's definitely doable. This is still being sort of, that interface is still being defined. So, and it's being designed in a ticket on the repo by the .org design team. And I don't know, I could imagine seeing a sort of settings page or modal where you can check what you want to export, like a configuration page. You can even have settings for setting predefined starter content, setting the colors or the global styles for this theme that you're exporting. So yeah, all of this is like up for design.
And I will share another link where from yesterday or the day before, Jeff Ong had published on how to create a block-based template, a theme, and he actually walked through the whole setup. And it was actually a very nice piece of article and tutorial. And I will share that in a minute. I first wanted to go to Marcio's question. So in the traditional template system, we have full control of the markup on a template part or page template. But now blocks are a fundamental part of that markup. For themes that plan to use functional CSS with the default WordPress blocks, for example, how can we have that same level of control? Should we create custom blocks?
So blocks have a way of setting class names on them, custom class names on the sidebar at the bottom. I'm not sure if you've seen. So that's a way you could add these functional CSS class names to blocks. You could also filter, like have a filter that does it programmatically. It's definitely doable. It's not something I would encourage because it's not easy for users then to work with unless they know how to code CSS pretty well. But it's definitely doable if you require that by using existing methods like filters and the feature for custom CSS class names.
Yeah, and I can see that there are some template theme supports actions where you can narrow down the number or the list of sizes, font sizes to be used, the list of colors to be used. And I'm sure sooner or later there will also be more of that. But thank you, Marcia. That's a very good question. And Bego, yes, there will be a recording available afterwards. And then there was another question. Did I miss it? Bego also asked where in the template hierarchy are actually those block templates come in. It's at the latest level, so who had saved the last kind of wins, or where does it come in?
Well, you mean for a given template, like say singular or single?
Right, yeah, if you have a single
They're
page.
unique. You can't have two customized ones. So if you try to go edit your singular, it's going to load the one that's already customized. You would have to delete it to load the one from the file again. Deleted, there'll probably also be a button that will say something like go back, reset to default, or something like that.
Okay. So what else do you want to show us today? We are, so one was also.
We have a couple more questions.
We have a couple more questions. Did I overlook them? Oh yeah, coming in now. Zarko Juric has a question. So what would be the purpose of the customizer after full site editing takes place in WordPress?
So it wouldn't be very useful for block-based themes, at least themes that fully embrace block templates. It will still be useful for themes that only do it partially or don't do it at all. And another thing is that this site editor or whatever it ends up becoming, the thing I demoed, is sort of like a new customizer built on blocks because you're editing your whole site in a single place. Oh, another cool thing that I wanted to show is an early exploration of how you could navigate through things here. So if you're in a header, you're editing, say, I want to add a link to my home. It will recognize that this is an internal link, and it's going to say edit page template. I can click on it and I go to edit this. I'm still in the header because I clicked on that link, but I'm in the index template, which is what's going to show on my home page. So this is kind of how like the customizer, you can click on links and navigate around, but all in the block editor. And my changes to the header are still there and I can save them.
So we have another question by Stephen Bang Nielsen, and here's so how are action hooks like WP underscore head, WP underscore footer, or WP underscore body underscore open inserted in a block theme?
Here we go. So there's this file called the template canvas that actually renders. Once a block template is resolved, it will go ahead and render it using this PHP file, which has like the bare bones WP head, WP footer, body open, and then the template goes here.
Looks easy enough. So then Josh Baker has another question. Well, here's a, yeah. I could see many of these templates using blocks that are built solely to be placed in the specific spots in the theme. In that case, do the blocks files remain in a plugin? He's asking because most of his projects at work include both custom theme and collection of custom blocks. But what is the best practice that you envision about that?
So yeah, this is interesting because really high-end themes will probably have very specific requirements for blogs, and they might be filtering existing blocks, or they might be introducing new blocks. And if they are introducing new blocks, that does introduce this question of like, how do you ship blocks with themes? Because themes can't really have plugin content, just like plugins can't have themes. So this really ties in with the work being done on the block directory. And the idea is that the theme directory, when you're looking and browsing for themes and you're looking to install a theme, it's going to show you somehow the blocks that you need to install to support the theme. And it's going to prompt you or give you a notice that by activating the theme, you're also installing these blocks from the block directory. And to the user, it's all going to happen in one step. For the developers, you already might have some of those blocks, so they don't want need to install all of them. And for the developer, then they're still going to develop the theme in separate and then have blocks in the block directory. And somehow the theme is going to define dependencies on those blocks.
And some of it is a really still a great theory because the block directory hasn't been built out yet. And they, I think, went back to the drawing board a couple of months ago. There's also the idea that themes probably also have block patterns that are kind of a collection of blocks that are displayed in the theme in a certain way. And that made that available through a block pattern section of the inserter, where you kind of click the plus sign and then have the, so this all in the works. And I think just take it one at a time is really how you can explore all that right now. So there are a lot of moving parts to that. Now, Enrique, and I get to your question, Eileen, in a minute. Enrique, are you going to able to show on your development environment how you can replace a single page template, for instance, where you say, okay, the theme comes with that, but I, as a user, I want different things on there. Are you able to, is that already released?
Like
I know you talked about it before.
Completely redefine this index template.
Say that again.
Like completely change this index template.
Not so much the index template, but when you kind of have a blog post. So you have here post content placeholder. Is that a single blog post view, or is that just the front page?
Right. So this is the WP post content block that I showed earlier here. This is going to render the first post in the loop. This branch does not have this feature, but this can also be nested under something called a post block or a query block that sets the post content and makes it render specific posts instead of just reading from the loop. And the query block would not just be a single post, it'd be a result of a query, of a WP query.
Excellent. So Eileen has the question, will you be able to set colors or fonts through the customizer? And similar to how 2020 adds colors into the inspector controls through the customizer.
Yeah, so there's work has started in the past month in this new set of features called global styles. It's all really well documented on the issue on GitHub. If you search for global styles, it will show up. And it's a way for themes to, it's a standard for themes to define things like this in an interoperable way. So it's a JSON object where you have like some global styles like text, like paragraph, font size, color, all of these sort of global CSS things. And there's also a hierarchy here. So you have global, so it applies to the entire site. You have document, so it applies to like a post type or a specific post. And then you have blocks, so like it applies to a specific block and a specific post. And themes can export these, can ship with these configurations, which users can then make edits on top of, and those get saved. And then they can switch themes, and edits are specific to the theme they were using when they made these edits or customizations. So they can switch between themes and keep their customizations. In the Github issue, there's actually a visual prototype where you can play around with some global style controls like color and see what happens when you switch themes, how customizations live on between theme switches. But it's actually exactly what was mentioned there with 2020, except it's done in a way that's the same for all themes and can be leveraged at more levels.
Yeah, so where do you said that is possible to see on the GitHub issue or PR? Oh, the global styles, yeah, I remember, yeah. That is actually a whole interesting way to do. Yeah, that's it, exactly, yeah. So on the YouTube channel, Aristides Statopoulos has a question for you. And then he's watching from Greece. So are there any plans to include the responsive grid mode PR for inner blocks, that's not entirely about the themes, but yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure if you had have an answer for that. Are there any plans to include the responsive grid mode PR for the inner blocks?
Yeah, we definitely need that or something like that in core, because you probably want to go beyond columns when it comes to having 3D layouts. But there's still a lot of open design questions, and that PR hasn't gotten enough eyes. I'm not confident that it's gonna look anything like that when it ships, but it's a good start.
Yeah, well, thank you. So there's another question of Stephen has another question that if I get the future template hierarchy in a block theme right, page.html will be preferred before page.php, but will page-$ID PHP preferred before page.html, or will HTML templates always be preferred?
Yeah, so that's a good question. He's been paying a lot of attention. I didn't want to address that without someone asking, because it's kind of makes it even harder to grasp at first. But the original proposal said that, yes, I propose that page ID.php should be preferred before page HTML. So even PHP templates should be preferred over HTML templates if they're more specific. But for simplicity, for this feature flag, if you have HTML templates activated, it's just going to look at HTML templates. So no, but it's not set in stone yet. I originally proposed that it should be, the answer should be yes to that question. But now I'm kind of being convinced otherwise, because I see cases like this where a theme author might want to have a page ID before page HTML, which is very confusing for both the user and the theme developer to sort of wrangle with. And in that case, like if there's a theme author that wants this control, I would see them having everything as PHP templates and then manually requiring template parts as sort of registered areas that can be edited by the user. But this is sort of a question that has to be answered by people developing themes on the daily and running into walls.
I'm muted again. I'm sorry. So Eileen has another question. So how will plugins that create pages with shortcodes added to be able to access page templates if they are built with the block templates? If your plugin has a specific block, will you be able to insert it? I think there are actually two questions, but yeah.
So how will plugins that create pages with shortcodes, I'm assuming?
Yeah, shortcodes is kind of the whole API.
Okay, with shortcodes added, be able to access page templates if they are built with block templates. So when you say, okay, so the page template is built with block templates and you want a page to access it?
A plugin.
So plugins
to be able to insert a shortcode
on a page?
Mm-hmm. I think that's, if I understood this correctly, yeah.
Well, the page will just be like post content. So you can just add a shortcode there. If it's a normal page, if it's a non-blog editor page, then you can just add a shortcode. If it's a blog editor post content, then you can add a shortcode block.
Mm-hmm. So I would think that plugins that use shortcodes, you can use the shortcode on the page as a user, but you cannot dynamically insert into a page template that's done with HTML a shortcode from a plugin. I think that was the question. I think the whole Gutenberg and how templates are made, as well as blocks, sooner or later, the whole system will go away from shortcodes.
Yeah.
So that it actually can be implemented. So do you have this case, Eileen?
I'm assuming it's like a really complex shortcode that has been developed over a long amount of time, and rebuilding it in a block doesn't make sense or is too costly. So you can definitely do it. You can insert a shortcode block, and you can also do that programmatically. You don't have to have someone open the page and edit it on the editor.
Yeah, it will need some heavy development there. Yeah.
If your plugin has a specific.
Another question, yeah. Bagel. Thinking of clients, will users have a chance to reset their changes of the blocks to the starter content? It's one question. So right now the customizer doesn't offer a way to restart from scratch, except if you reinstall WordPress. Would that be changed in a block theme starter content kind of way?
Yeah, so because the files are still there and your changes are not overriding them, you can, the site editor UI or the new customizer, whatever we decide to call it, can offer ways of going back to starter content, either for your whole theme or maybe just for a specific page template or for a specific template part. So you can say like header reset to starter.
Mm-hmm. And the other way around, you can say, okay, take out the starter and give me some plain blocks. I think I shared the theme shaper article in the chat window. And that theme that Jeff is using for that is 2020 block theme. And it has quite considerable starter content in there. And it creates automatically pages with that starter theme. And so that's probably a good implementation to play around with it and think through what would be needed with all the caveat. This is still in flux. And it might be handled differently when it's finally released. Maurice Tadros wants to know how our sidebar is going to be handled.
So your sidebar, so you have an index template and it will probably be in a column and it'll be made of blocks, and you can make it a template part if you want to reuse it across more templates without having to go and make edits in each one of them. Yeah, so your sidebar will probably be a template part with blocks.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Down here, and then we have, I'm just going over to YouTube again. No, there doesn't seem to be any questions there either. I think with the links that we shared, and the team of Gutenberg also shared in the GitHub repository of the theme experiments, certain resources that you could use and kind of read up about it and see exactly how that can play out. So what's next in for you to work on? Of course, Flash is out, but there's the designers are still kind of looking at that and get more people on it.
So there's a lot of design work being done on what this new customizer will look like, how navigation will look like inside of it, how spinning up variations will look like. So now I guess I'm focusing more now, while those questions are answered, on starting to work on better blocks, core blocks designed for this sort of editing context. So like you have your post block, which is going to render a specific post or a list of posts from a loop you defined. And then inside of it, for the layout of these posts, you're going to have a post title, a post content, a post author, a post categories, a post tags, all of these blocks that render fields from the post. And this is just for posts. You're going to have the same for your site. So you have a site title, a site description, all of these things. So right now we have a lot of those. They're pretty bare bones. They just have like text fields that you can edit. But of course, we want to do a lot better than that. So I'm working on things like making the post date block, instead of just showing a date, having you can click on it and render a calendar, set the date visually, and then change the date format in the block toolbar, and having it work like that. So making making better blocks for full site editing.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, for a lot of people, it's very interesting to see what the post, the collection of posts, the post loop really is going to do on a block theme. So I think that is all the time we had. If you have another question, I think that now is the time to ask it while Enrique is still here. If you have, So part of the discussion is also, so in the theme experiments GitHub repository on the bottom of the README, there are the articles to block-based theme documentation, which still has the experimental label on it, but it will repeat a few things that Enrique told us. Then the full-site editing label on the GitHub repo, so you see what's in store and what is discussed and how it will be approached. So that's for those of you who are very interested in that and want to contribute on the discussion. And then also an article about defining content block areas. So all this is definitely helping you get your head around. Thank you so much, Enrique. It is wonderful that you did this for us and spent the time and walk us through it. I also, and that's pretty much it. I wish you all a great afternoon or evening or wherever you are. And see you at the next time. Tomorrow, Mark, Urain, and I, we will record the Gutenberg changelog podcast episode number 13 that will cover Gutenberg 7.3 with all its many, I think 160 PRs are actually in that release. So we are not going to talk all about it because nobody listens to a 2-hour podcast episode, but we will cover a nice, interesting subset of that. And yeah, thank you, Marcio. He says, all this looks very promising and thanks for sharing it with us. You are more than welcome. And I wish you, Enrique, much luck for your awesome work that you did there. And we hope we have you again in the summer for if there's a release about these things. Thanks so much. You take care all. Thank you, Aline. Thank you, Rita. Thank you, Peter. It was all great to have you. Thank you all, and see you the next time. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.